Okay, yesterday we left off with the smearing, scraping stuff, and we said that if food is not a problem to smear peanut butter or margarine or cream cheese, whatever. It's not a problem smearing it on food if you're doing it for food. If you're doing it to beautify the food, then you shouldn't do it. If you make an egg salad and you want to smooth it out and it should look good, so then you're not doing it for food, and then you shouldn't do it on Shabbos. Okay, so we said also, so now what happens if I want to use like an ice cream scoop? You have a container of ice cream, you want to use an ice cream scoop. So even though the bottom line is you might be scraping, smoothing something, it doesn't matter because it's all for the food process, and then it wouldn't be an issue at all. Okay, bar of soap, he said, bottom line is you're not allowed to use a bar, what?
If you're making like a flour with a cream or something, is that like...
Mean a flour to cream.
Making the shape of a flour with something mayonnaise...
You can't make a shape of a flour on Shabbos anyway. Baina. Baina. You can't make shapes of buildings or you can't. I'll give you an example. Somebody made a tuna salad and now they want to move it around and it should look like a fish. Like people do that. You're not allowed to do that on Shabbos. First of all, you're smoothing it, which you're not allowed to, and then it's also you're building a picture. A Yom Tov, if you're doing it for food, would be more lenient. If you couldn't do it before Yom Tov. Okay, but liquid soap, a bar of soap, he said you're not allowed to use on Shabbos. But liquid soap, again, there's an argument in halacha. Most opinions, by the way, say you could use liquid soap on Shabbos if it's not creamy, if it's liquidy. Some people say you can't because you're creating a lather and you're creating bubbles. But again, it says Shulchan and others hold that that's not an issue. So liquid soap that's not creamy, you would be allowed to use on Shabbos. Okay, just a few guidelines, the practical case he gives. Deodorants, aerosol and roll-on may be used on Shabbos, but not a solid deodorant because that's smearing. Lipstick or chapstick you can't use on Shabbos. Toothpaste you can't use on Shabbos. Again, all these things, it's cream and you're smearing it on Shabbos. Facial creams and hand creams, also you're not allowed to use them on Shabbos because again you're smearing. But we'll soon get to issues when sometimes you would be allowed to use a cream on Shabbos, but we'll get there in a few minutes. Now, years ago they used to have earplugs out of wax. It would be a soft wax, and then like beeswax, and then you'd soften it up and you'd put it into your ear to the shape of the ear. So that you wouldn't be allowed to do it either because wax is a thick material. It's biblically considered scraping and smoothing. So you wouldn't be allowed to use that on Shabbos in any way whatsoever. Today's earplug, you just stick something, plastic or whatever it is, into the ear, that you're not smoothing it in any way, then you're allowed to. What? That would be a problem because you're scraping the tongue. I mean,
it's a form of cleaning.
I understand, but toothpaste is also cleaning, but it's still smoothing. But you're still scraping.
It's like pulling a spoon on your flesh. It's a spoon. It's literally like a metal spoon.
Yeah, but a tongue is a different type of material. You actually, I don't know, you actually smoothing it?
It's a piece of plastic that you just to scrape germs off your tongue in the morning.
Again, if it's not scraping the tongue, you're allowed to. If it's scraping the tongue, you're not allowed to. So I don't know what it's considered.
It's called a scraper.
It's called a scraper, okay, but that doesn't mean it would be necessarily forbidden. The way you're describing it doesn't sound like it's okay because again, you're probably scraping the tongue to get the stuff from, because the stuff, the tongue is very porous. So when you're scraping it, you're actually scraping pieces out of it, and it's a form of scraping and smoothing. But I never heard of that thing b'chlal. I never heard of a tongue scraper. Okay, for instance, it's silly putty or clay, okay? You can't play with clay on Shabbos or silly putty because it's a hard material and you're smoothing it out. You're making shapes out of it, you're smoothing it, so that wouldn't be allowed to do in any way whatsoever. What? No. Under what age? If a kid under 6 is playing with it, the father doesn't have to stop them. If it's a kid over 6, halachically, the father would have to stop them. But you can't give it to them. Even little kids, you can't give the silly putty. You have to give them different things to play that they're allowed to play on Shabbos. Huh? Play-Doh, same thing. Play-Doh, it's clay, all these things are the same thing. Huh? It's also an issue with that.
I make shapes, it won't form.
No, it's not a question of only shapes, it's smoothing it.
But it's not, it slips through your finger. It's not.
It could be, it's a hard material. It's not any different than a cream. It's a hard material. A hard material means it's not liquid.
It's liquid.
It's not liquid.
It's a gel liquid.
Yeah, but the gel liquid is like a cream. It's not any different than a cream. Baby oil you can use on Shabbos. Okay. So now let's get to the situation.
Baby oil meaning for a baby?
What?
Baby, when you say baby oil, you mean using it for a baby?
If an adult wants to use it.
Oh, anybody can use this.
Yeah, baby oil is mamish a liquid. It's not mamareach. It's not smoothing because it's liquid. Huh?
It's not seafood.
No.
Smearing.
Smearing is only if it's a cream. Baby oil and dishwashing detergent is mamish liquid. It's not creamy. Baby oil is not creamy. It's liquidy. If it would be creamy, then it would be a problem. Baby oil does not heal. Baby oil soothes. There's a difference between, that we'll learn more about healing. When there's a difference between soothing something or healing something. Healing something is a shaila of the four on Shabbos, so that in most cases, not all cases, is forbidden because you might come to grind medications. But something which is only soothing and not healing, you're allowed to. Like if you have a burn, okay, and you want to put a piece of ice, they tell you not to do that. But let's say that you put a piece of ice, over there might be another problem with ice, because you're melting it with your hands, that you're not allowed to on Shabbos either. You can't melt ice with your hands on Shabbos.
No, you shouldn't put ice on it.
But I'm saying, okay, let's say you have an ice pack, okay? You have an ice pack. You're allowed to put an ice pack on if you have something uncomfortable, right? It got a little blown up a little bit, whatever, yeah? Because ice pack doesn't heal it, it just soothes it. So it's not a din of the four. If it's not the four, then you're allowed to. Baby oil doesn't heal. Baby oil just makes it feel better. That's all it does. It soothes it. Okay, so if it's a life-endangering situation, there's no question that you can use whatever you want. I mean, in Shabbos, you desecrate Shabbos. Now, what happens if the illness is not life-threatening, but it's an illness that your whole body is sick? A simple example, you have the flu, okay? Or the whole body is affected, or a severe earache that you become dysfunctional. So then the din is like this. You're not allowed to, but a guy, he has a headache, does not have a din of a sick person. Okay, it's talking about the whole body, the whole body is affected by this illness. So even though it's not life-endangering, it's not life-threatening, but nevertheless, you're allowed to transgress a rabbinic prohibition on Shabbos. The Alter Rebbe happens to be extremely makel with this. The Alter Rebbe holds you can even do something biblically prohibited if you do it with a shinui, different than normal. So even though, let's say, normally to take Vaseline, let's say, right, which is thick consistency, to smear it on your hand would be biblically forbidden, because it's mamish thick and you're smoothing it. Nevertheless, the Alter Rebbe holds if you do it with a shinui, you don't do it the normal way of doing it, you do it backhanded or something like that, you would be allowed to for a chayla that's in bed because, not life endangering, but he's sick in bed because he's making him crazy. You can better, even if you have a guy, it's even for sure better, then it's not an issue at all. So what happens though, if somebody has not a life endangering situation, and it's not, let's say, I'll give you an example. They have sunburn. They got sunburned. Now sunburn doesn't make your whole body sick. You know, don't go lay in bed because you have a sunburn. So, then the din is as follows. You could do it with a shinui, for instance, or let's say there's a spray out of a can that you can put on a sunburn. Okay, that you would be allowed to. If it would be a liquid to put on a sunburn, again, you would be allowed to. What happens though if it's a cream? So what you could do is, you could put, let's say, cream onto a gauze, preferably before Shabbos, but let's say not. You could put it on the gauze, and then put the gauze on the skin. So even though it's getting smeared, but you're not doing it the normal way of smearing it. So then again, it would be allowed to do. Or you can, if you have a tube of Vaseline, or whatever the ointment is, right? You have a tube, and you squeeze from the tube directly onto the wound, and then you put a gauze on it, it's also allowed. But let's say you have a container of Vaseline, or Desitin, which is a thick cream, right? You can't, on Shabbos, it says in halacha, you can't take out with your finger a whole bunch of Vaseline with your finger. Why? Because then you're smoothing that Vaseline inside the tube, or the Desitin. So then you'd have to take it out with a shinui. How do you take it out? Normally you take it out with your fingers. So now if you take a little piece of wood, or whatever, another way of taking it that you normally don't do it, then again it would be allowed to take Vaseline out of a tube. But just if you have a tube of Vaseline, you can't just go like this on Shabbos and take a Vaseline and just put it on or dab it on. So ideally it's best for people to have, let's say, tubes of the creams and things like that you squeeze it straight out and then you cover it with a gauze and you're fine. What?
So when it's squeezing it out of a tube, like a toothpaste tube,
That's not a problem.
So you're saying it's from a container?
I'll tell you where you have a problem. You have a problem, huh?
You're saying tube,
It's a problem, the tube is not a problem.
Correct. Because the tub, when you're taking out with your finger, you're squeezing. This is just coming out. I'll tell you where you do have a problem. If it comes out from the tube in a certain design, then you can't use it on Shabbos. So for instance, whipped cream, you know, that you have the bottles, and you press on the thing down and out it comes the whipped cream. But if you notice, when it comes out, it's actually coming out in a design. There's two lines, it's a whole design. So that's not a problem of squeezing, it's not a problem of smoothing or scraping, it's a problem of writing a design. So again, it's not this malacha, but it's a different malacha. But those tubes you can't use. But otherwise, a tube that comes out not in any particular design, you can use the tube. What?
Special lights that you cut in cucumber and it comes
In a shape. Those Shabbos should not be used. Because it's cutting it into a particular shape, which you're making shapes
When you cut
into.
it straight, it's cutting to a straight shape.
But that's a design. Straight is not a design. This is a design. The bottom line, it's a design. The way you cut it, this is not a design.